Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I've never told anyone about this incident, not even to my wife of 50 years. I grew up on a small farm just outside of Dover, Minnesota. In the springtime, if my chores were done and with my father's permission, I'd dig some worms, grab my pole and go fishing in Dover Creek for chubs and shiners that my mom would cook for us. One spring day, after walking the 4 or 5 miles, I arrived at my favorite spot. As I'm walking there alone along the creek, something moved in the water ahead of me. I kept my eyes on that area until I was fairly close, when suddenly this thing or creature surfaced. It had big eyes and many arms or tentacles. It looked right at me and, without speaking, said in my mind that for the next few years it would contact me through my mind to find out what was going on in the world. As the years went by, I would always be alone or secluded when we would communicate. It then abruptly stopped. It ended after I joined the military. It never tried to harm me, but the thought exchange was like rerunning a newsreel to whatever was tapping into my subconscious. For all I know, this may still be going on, only now I don't know about it. I'm 74 years old and I still feel a presence that I cannot explain. The only thing I can remember is that it said it wouldn't hurt me and it was peaceful. It only wanted to study this world through the eyes and mind of a young human. I'm not much of an artist, but it resembled a humanoid octopus. It may have contacted me while I was in the military, but I got the overwhelming feeling it did not like violence and it could not understand what I was doing during a war. I still think it is with me every now and again. It's like I space out and will rerun the news. As a child, I watched every bit of TV news that I could, especially Walter Cronkite. I also watched old reels of World War II. My interest in that came out of nowhere, so, in my mind, I believe this entity is studying our world and is almost afraid of it because of our unbelievable violence towards each other. It seems very peaceful to me. I'm a peaceful person and I am also a pastor. I think this is not a threat to the human race. I believe they will never come if they are from somewhere else because we are such a violent society.
It was April 16, 2012. I live near Spokane, Washington. I was returning home at about 4 a.m. when just off to the left of my driveway something stood up in the field and looked at me. When it saw me stop, get out, and look in its direction, it then ran or squirmed across the street into the trees. At first, I thought it was a deer, but it was upright and running in a weird way, like an octopus. I think I saw it dragging one tentacle. It then went from tree to tree like it was circling me, so I walked very quickly to the house, making sure not to take my eyes off of it. When it was going from tree to tree, it would stop at that tree and peek at me from one side or the other, then move to the next tree and do the same thing at each tree. So when I went in the house, I grabbed a flashlight to see if it was a person. Mind you, I live in the country, so I don't really think someone was sleeping in my field and dragged their sleeping bag across the street. Another thing that helped me know it was not human was when I shined my flashlight on it, its eye shined green, not red like a human would. After I saw the eye color, I went back into the house waiting for it to try to get in or peek in my windows, so I laid on my couch looking, waiting, and listening. Nothing happened, so I just tried to go to sleep and get over it. By this time I was in denial and thought, okay, it was a deer. The next morning I thought about what I saw and walked out to the field where I saw it. There was nothing, but I remembered what it looked like. It was upright and a light shade of blue, which could have been from the moonlight. It was really skinny and tall with a teardrop-shaped head that kind of just formed into the body, no shoulders, and long arms that looked like tentacles. But that's all I remember, and now I can say it was flat out the scariest moment I have ever been through. I have seen ghosts and UFOs, but nothing like that. It still scares me just thinking about it to this day. Just a week or two before my event, there were reports of strange lights over one of my city's neighborhoods that were on the news the next day or the day after. I didn't think twice about this because I was in denial about what I saw until like 2 weeks after it all happened. I started realizing that it could be possible that I actually saw an alien, putting the two events together.
My sister and I saw the same thing a few months apart. The first sighting July 2019. I was on the phone with my boyfriend in rural Arizona, Navajo Nation. I was sitting in my truck at the time, parked facing my house to the east. With him and we would be on the phone until one of the others slept. This night it was him, and it was around 10 p.m. After I tried multiple times to wake my boyfriend up or to see if he was asleep, I hung up. After the call ended, I had this feeling like I was going to see something scary and I tried shaking it off. I look behind me to the west and towards the northwest is a lot with a giant streetlight in the middle of the property. In the area between the lot and my house is a ditch with some more space filling with that in the middle. But from the darkness, I saw this being come from the ditch and in contrast with the bright background of the lot, it floated and glided above the ground it seemed. The movements it made were really smooth and didn't have any motor movement jagged like any normal thing. I was astonished when I saw it because its arms weren't like normal arms, they were fluid and almost like tentacles. But it looked like water and its tentacle arms moved like a wave. The movement it glided was very fast as well. I was super scared and never experienced anything like it. I called it the Fluid Man to my family. I still see it when I think about it. Second sighting, my sister in October 2019, around 10 p.m. on a Friday night. My sister went outside to get some air since the wood stove can get a little hot when it's filled with wood and coal. She went outside and then opened the door fast to tell me to come. I was sitting at the table across the living room and in the kitchen. When I ran over, she said the thing was gone and that she saw something rise up from the ground like a zombie above the ground 20 to 30 feet in the air. She made the movement of it rising from the ground in upward motion very exaggerated, which made it seem creepier. It was in the same area as last time, since if you go out my front door, it's looking west. She said it started flying after two people walking west on the road going the same direction. My sister is a very hard-headed, stubborn person who isn't scared of anything. She's super courageous and will do anything to keep us safe. She never shows any emotion and keeps a strong front like my dad. Her and I have a special relationship, so I've seen the real her more than anyone and she's my best friend. However, I've never seen her that scared and alarmed in my life. It scared me too, cause it's something I rarely ever see. Both experiences were scary and it was weird they happened within months. I always hope that I never ever see it again. My sister always brings it up now and then on late nights.
I have a kind of strange and creepy experience I wanted to tell you about. It was about 45 years ago. I had just gotten my scuba diving certification and I knew several friends of mine that were quite a bit older than I was at the time. They must have been in their 30s or older. I went with them on a trip up Hood Canal. It's a branch off of Puget Sound, in Washington state here. It's salt water, but they claimed that they knew a place where there was supposed to be giant octopus living. I went with them and we went up there and we got out into the canal. If I remember right, we had to line ourselves up on a spot about 50 yards offshore. There was supposed to be a sunken fishing boat down there where this thing lived, and of course, in that area, you got some of the largest octopus in the world. It's not unusual to find big ones there, but we lined up with this house that was on shore and I descended down. I got down to about 75 feet and sure enough, we came out. Right there it was. There was a boat, an old rusty fishing boat down there, and there was nothing in sight. We went all around it, and the one that was kind of a self-proclaimed expert of the expedition, he was down underneath the stern with a flashlight looking underneath the stern, and suddenly this huge tentacled covered arm just zipped out. It smacked him right into his face mask straight with the tip of its arm and yanked it off, pulled it back down underneath, and he was struggling. We had to help him back up to the surface, and it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. That creature knew exactly how to disable the diver instantly. It could have easily killed the diver. But it just reached out and with the tip of, that tentacle right on the tip of its arm, just right on the end, right onto his face mask and just ripped it off and pulled it right back under. I imagine he probably could have got to the surface by himself, but he was blind. Temporarily, and because he, at least, lost most of his vision, we were there to just help him up. But we weren't about to go back down. It was amazing how intelligent those creatures really are, but I just thought that was a pretty strange experience. I thought it was strange.
I have to share this creepy and bizarre experience that happened in my life about 6 years ago. I used to tattoo and live out of the back of this house in the city of Rosemead, California. During this time, I was going through a very confused and depressing state in my life. For some reason, I kept this back house shielded with blackout curtains to keep any light and sound out of fear of neighbors knowing I was running a business out of my residence. For some weird reason, I painted my bedroom 3 shades of gray on the walls and the ceiling was black. I used to hear many sounds of things moving outside in the kitchen and living room area. During the night, I could see this moving, misty shadow float across my bedroom wall, but I shrugged it off once I ruled out it wasn't a gas leak. One night I woke up in a very calm and relaxed state, but I found myself floating above the bed with my feet barely hovering off the mattress. I knew I wasn't dreaming because I was aware of all the items in my room and my eyes were scanning around. I found my body floating gently back down onto the bed, but was suddenly slammed down onto the mattress violently, as if somebody put his hand across my face and pulled me down. It felt as if I was in that state of sleep paralysis. To my horror, as I looked to my side, I could not move my face or body, but with my eyes, I clearly saw the silhouette or the shadow figure of this creature. I saw the clearly defined sharp-pointed nose and, as crazy as it sounds, the silhouette of this tentacle for an arm with all suction cups clearly defined. Its other arm held my head down to the bed and pulled it, as it was trying to make me look back at the ceiling, and, in shock, every inch of my black ceiling was covered with this bizarre-looking hieroglyphic as if it were painted in wet substance. In my head, it was the color of blood, as it was hard to make out in the moonlight shining through my window. I felt as if the entity was trying to tell me something. With all my energy, I willed myself out of this paralyzed state, and once I blinked my eyes, it was over. No writings on my ceiling. No creature. Everything was gone. A few other weird things happened after this incident, especially at night and sometimes even during the day, but nothing that tops that crazy night I told you about. I'm not sure if there is a dark history in this residence or if I'm just haunted myself, because I've seen things in every place I've lived. Friends don't believe me, thinking I was under the influence of something, but I wasn't. I was completely sober. I know what I witnessed.
This happened in the summer of 2016. I was staying at my grandparents' house for a few weeks in the summer while my mom was on vacation. They live near Grand Junction, Colorado. Their house is by a large river, and the whole area has a ton of trees, plant life, and animals. I was letting my dog out one night. There's hardly any lights around their property, so I grabbed a flashlight. My dog is outside for maybe a minute before I hear her start viciously growling and barking like I've never heard before. She's growled and barked at animals or people outside before, but this was more aggressive than I'd ever heard her. I start making my way over to my dog to investigate. I make it about halfway to my dog and I freeze dead in my tracks. I'm pointing my flashlight in the direction she's facing, and I see the most unsettling thing I've ever seen. At first I think I'm just imagining it or tripping out, but there was no denying it was clear as day. It was about 3 or 4 feet tall, a rectangular figure but with rounded edges. Imagine like a 4-foot-tall Twinkie LOL. It was this gross, translucent tan flesh color, like the color of a naked mole rat. There was no apparent face or limbs. All I saw was a bunch of tentacle or leg-looking things protruding all down the front and side of its body. The way it was moving was creepy. At first it was sort of gently rocking side to side. And then I swear it started taunting my dog, like running from one spot to another to mess with her. At this point I got too scared it would do something to my dog, so I ran to her, snatched her up and booked it inside and locked the door. When I peeked back outside, the thing was gone. I don't think anything has ever disturbed me that much in real life before. My body wouldn't stop shaking for probably 25 minutes after I got inside. The most fucked up part is the next day I told my aunt I saw a weird alien bug-looking creature outside the night before. She then said, "I've seen some weird shit out there," and proceeded to explain seeing the exact same thing I saw. Same color, shape, lots of tentacle, centipede-looking appendages. And the icing on the cake for me was when she said it kept rocking from side to side. I said, "You're kidding me. That's exactly what I saw last night." We both got chills and flipped out because it confirmed it wasn't our imagination. My aunt said she saw it on my grandparents' property while she was outside at night too. They have a pretty large property. A large house, 2 smaller guest houses on the property, a large garden, and a barn where they have chickens. She said her encounter was about a week prior to mine. She saw it right outside one of the guest houses, and I saw it near the garden. Unfortunately, my grandparents live about 4 to 5 hours away from me, but the next time I visit, I'm sure as hell going alien hunting LOL. Both grandparents are alive and well. They live in a large house on their property. My aunt lives with them, but she stays in one of the smaller guest houses. My grandparents are sick of supporting her for many reasons, but allow her to stay there for the sake of her two young kids. I've never asked my grandparents if they've seen anything out of the ordinary, but now I want to. I have a feeling my grandpa would have some good stories. They have quite a few neighbors, but the properties over there are pretty big, so you'd have to drive down the road for a minute to reach their homes. There's a lot of farmland and fruit orchards on the properties around there. It's interesting, though, because I've heard there's a lot of UFO sightings in Grand Junction, the border going into Utah.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.